When it comes to eating disorders, you may or may not have already identified what triggers the disordered behaviors. And today I want to talk more about how to identify those triggers for yourself. First, welcome to my channel or welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie. I'm Lyland's eating disorder specialist. I post on this channel 3 times a week all about eating disorders, body image issues, and general mental health. So if any of that interests you, please click the subscribe button down below. I also have an Instagram and a weekly blog. I would greatly appreciate it if you check those out. If you're interested, I will leave those links in the description below. Also, if you found this video helpful or informative at the end, I'd also appreciate a thumbs up because that helps other people to find my channel, and I'm hoping I can help them as well. All right, let's get on into it. So first off, why is it important to be able to identify your triggers? It is really important because, first off, knowledge is power. When we are more aware of the reasons that we do things, it gives us empowerment to be able to do something about it. It's empowering us to be able to learn from that and adjust what we do and practice different techniques and all of this type of stuff in order to improve a certain behavior or to decrease a certain behavior. So it might be really difficult sometimes to even identify if we have triggers. And eating disorders, when it comes to eating disorders, many people say that they don't feel that there's any particular triggers. And I'm not saying that that's not true. However, I do hope that if you are struggling with an eating disorder at all, that you at least be open to the idea that perhaps there are triggers and perhaps you are not even aware of it. Because what happens is that sometimes we just go through life and then all of a sudden we have made choices or, whatever occurred in our life, and then we're in a certain spot and we don't even know how we got there. Or we had different experiences that we don't remember those experiences and how that ended up landing us in the place that we're at. So when it comes to eating disorders, the behaviors that we engage in, oftentimes we are engaging in it almost as autopilot at some point, or you don't even realize the reason why those behaviors tend to flare up or when they flare up. So I really hope that you use this tool that I'm going to propose to you in this video today to really try to work backwards in order to identify if there are any triggers, and if so, what those triggers are. Let's work it through right now to give you an example of how this is worked through. Let's start by thinking about the last time you engaged in whatever behavior that you are thinking, whether that is binging, whether that is purging, whatever that behavior is for you. Think about that experience and just take a moment and bring yourself back to that moment. What was going on through your mind? Can you remember anything, or was it blank? And write that down. Open up your journal and write this all down. Write down what happened in that moment. Whatever you can remember. What was the time? What was anyone home? Were you home? Were you out? What was around you? What were you listening to? What were you hearing? Who were you talking to? Everything about the experience that you can recall. What were you thinking? Write that all down. Take some time to do that. Once you do that, now go back a little bit. What happened earlier? What happened in the hour prior? Do you remember, were you just getting home from school or home from work? Were you taking the dog for a walk? Were you on a phone call? What was it? Just identify whatever actually occurred before that. And then go back, keep going back earlier that day and trying to trail back exactly what happened. And then once you have a pretty good outline of what your day looked like, the best of your ability, don't feel like it has to be perfect because it's not going to be perfect. So to the best of your ability, write it all down. Once you do that, I want you to go through and identify, what feelings were associated with those events. What do you remember doing? What do you remember thinking? And let's say you had a stressful phone call earlier on in the day, and then all of a sudden you realize that the entire day kind of spiraled from there, and then you came home after you were all anxious because of all the negativity that happened that day, and then because of the anxiety or the stress, you decided that you were going to binge. And it probably didn't happen on that type of conscious level, but now that you have maybe a pathway, an inkling that perhaps stress or negative emotions might be a trigger for me, All right, let's try it again. Let's go to the next time that you remember having that behavior. And I would take the next week. And anytime that you engage in a behavior, as close to as possible to the actual event, right afterwards, trail back, write down and do this entire exercise over again. And once you have that a couple of times, what you're able to do is look for patterns and saying and looking through that, kind of evaluating, was I also experiencing those emotions or was it something else? Maybe there's multiple triggers that you're identifying, or maybe it comes down to very similar ones, and the negative emotions tend to be your trigger. Once you're able to identify that, then there's some power in all of that. What can you do now that you have identified those triggers? And granted, each trigger is going to be different, but perhaps you might be able to avoid those triggers. If negative emotions are your triggers, what can you do to cope before it gets to the point that it's just so overwhelming? With the knowledge of what your triggers are, you can work with your therapist, you can work with on your own. Of course, I always recommend that you have an eating disorder specialist, but you can work on this on your own as well, and trying to figure out ways that you can work and to improve and to make it so that the triggers aren't necessarily such a big part of your life, or that you're able to more easily deal with the triggers in a more healthy and productive and adaptive way. I'm really curious to hear from you if you've already identified what your triggers are or were. How did you do that, and what did you do with that knowledge? I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, I would greatly appreciate a thumbs up. You can click my face over here to subscribe to my channel, and I wish you awareness and empowerment on your journey to finding your state of balance, and I will see you in my next video.